Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second race weekend of the Herd Beginner Race Series. Tonight we will have a single lap of Douce France, and that will see us take on around 25 kilometres at about 150 metres of climbing. So we're expecting it to be fast, flat, and good for sprinters. Steve Pritchard, would you like to enter this race?
Negative. You've described everything I hate about racing on Zwift there, James. Fast, flat, good for sprinters. I think for me, I'd be forming the herd of mullets very early on. Nice, gentle recovery ride and a bit of chat on Discord.
So that's what, 5 watts a kilo for 30 seconds, and then 1.5 to 2 for another hour.
Sounds ideal. Becca, which setting would you set your drill to tonight?
I think it's going to be very fast, so I think 6 watts a kilo for the start and 4 for the rest of it would probably get you a nice top 20.
It certainly is a very tough route tonight. We're going to talk a lot about the rollers early on, I think. But James, who are we following tonight?
Sadly, we don't have Craig tonight, so it's just going to be a single rider tonight. But we've gone back to one of our favourites, Ben Poynton. Ben is a bit of a powerhouse, so I think this course is definitely going to favour him. But at 5 seconds to go, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we are off. So Ben already holding around about 450 watts. Up into the 600s, 700s. Yeah, he's not hanging around. Definitely expect Ben to be in the front group as we go around the first corner. But onto our key topic of the night is going to have to be rollers, because we will very, very, very shortly hit the rolling section of this course. Ben's still hanging onto the front group quite nicely. But we're going to... The early stages of this route, so you'll go into a short rolling section before a longer rolling section, and the short rollers are probably about up to 5 to 10 seconds each, and the longer ones are probably more like 20 to 25. Steve, you mentioned how you thought that you would probably struggle on this course. I think the first probably 10 kilometres would probably not be too bad for you.
I mean, it's not terrible. It is just deeply unpleasant, as we've discussed before. For those of you who did the TTT a few weeks ago in the Zwift Racing League, you'll have done the reverse of this route in RGV, and those kickers at the end are just absolutely horrendous, especially on tired legs. Our TTT team, it's really hard to say that after a couple of beers as well, but our team really struggled even to just stay in a blob at this point, and I don't know how the people with the pace lines coped. I think at the moment it's all about getting that front group expending as little energy as you can, and then just hang on and kind of pray, really. I think once you've got through the rollers, there's possibly an opportunity for a bit of a rest as we approach what will probably be what we'll generously describe as the main obstacle of the day. Becca, what can you tell us about the aqueduct?
It's very short and not very steep, so I don't think it should break up the pack that much. If they've got all of the rollers together, then they will probably get over the aqueduct together. But if they've got the good legs for it, then you can always launch an attack from there.
We've got a breakaway of 4, potentially 5, but it looks like they'll pull them back in. This front group is only 18 strong. We've got a field tonight of 99, but this looks like that the breakaway might stick. We've got now 6 in it. These guys may or may not get back on. Ben's definitely having a big dig to try and get on. He's with some very familiar faces. We've got Lisa Jones in there, Becca. I think you're keeping an eye on tonight.
Yeah, I'm watching Lisa tonight, who has a very fetching kit, as always, in her endless supply of really nice kits that she somehow manages to find on.
It's all about the 3 a.m. bike rides. But yeah, no, so we've got a few familiar names in here. We've got Herd well represented. But the breakaway appears to have been pulled back in, certainly by Ben, who's currently sat in 7th wheel. But we're well into this short rolling section, gone through the first 2 kilometres in a little under 3 minutes. So the pace is decent. It's not quite the pace that we've seen on some other events. I think last week, when I was racing, it was definitely up around and over 45 kilometres per hour. But with the rollers, that's obviously keeping the pace down a little bit as well. Steve, have you got any insight into how to attack the rollers?
I mean, we're having a really interesting discussion about this in the week, weren't we, James? There's going to be a lot of challenges for people with wheel on versus wheel off, and really knowing your trainer, I think, is key on this one. What's the trainer delay like? How long are you going to have to keep that power going over these rollers? Quite often you find it's a sort of 3, 4, 5 second effort beyond the top of the roller where you think that's going to hurt the most, and or you think that the screen is telling you you're on a nice downhill section, and suddenly the legs are telling you you're really not. So it really is a case of just go as hard as you can, and hope you stay in this group at the moment, isn't it? James, you're a climber now officially, and beat me up every short hill. So what would your tactic be here?
I think I may have demonstrated on Thursday night that I am not quite a climber just yet. If the climbing is prefaced by 10 kilometres on the flat at a very high pace. So for me, my trainer delay is about 3 to 5 seconds. So I have to make certain that as you go over the top of a roller, you keep on pushing really hard for an extra 3 seconds or so, even though you're actually going downhill. Your trainer hasn't quite realised it yet. I think that some of the guys on Kickers and Neos are saying that their trainer delay is minimal, so that they are able to just pace themselves based on what the gradient actually says they're doing, rather than what the gradient was 3 seconds ago. And I believe this conversation, I was also criticised for being stuck in the 1800s when I asked Becca if she had any hair rollers as well. But I suspect they'd be particularly difficult to cycle over as well.
As someone with a kicker, it is fairly reactive. It's about a second behind usually, so going over the rollers is a lot easier using it.
Nice dodge. But we are over the short roller section now. We're moving into the longer rolling section, and looks like we have. Yep, we're in a group of 9. So these guys are now 13 plus seconds in front of the rest of the group. How's Lisa getting on? I can see she's just dropped off the back a little bit.
She seems to be in no man's land by herself. There's one guy 5 seconds in front of her, and then there's a group of 4 or 5 about 6 seconds behind her. So I think she'd probably be better off dropping back and waiting. But she seems to be trying to make a go for it by herself.
Good for Lisa. Steve, we spoke earlier in the week about how we thought that the initial rolling section was probably going to cause some fairly big splits, which we do seem to have seen today, and I think also they really hurt your legs.
Yeah, and I think we did think the tactics were just go as hard as you can, as early as you can, and try and recover here. Now, it's interesting to hear Lisa's on her own in a way there. Now, this is where it does get quite interesting in Zwift tactically. I can see the people on the front of this group are still pushing some big watts, but quite often in the lead group, you can find that kind of everyone sits up at the same time. And if you're in that group 10, 15 seconds behind, often, as they call it, the entente cordiale can form, and a few people will put a big dig in each, and you can actually see these groups reforming. But I just think today, looking at the dig gaps, we're looking at kind of 20 plus seconds back to the second group on the road. I think it's going to be really hard for them to get in. So I think we're looking at this 9 who are going to be competing for the lead, but it does look like now's the time just to try and sit up now. I mean, I don't know what kind of watts are doing. You can see Ben sat at 2.7 watts a kilogram, which for him, he's gone down to 2 now, but a good quality C rider like Ben, that's probably allowing him just to get a little bit of rest in and prep for the aqueduct. What I'm also noticing, James, is it's certainly 3 or 4 riders, it looked like, on the Pink Tron, adding weight to the rumour that the Pink Tron gives you a few more watts than any other type of Tron, I believe.
So Becca and I were actually just discussing this prior to going on air, and My point was that Go Faster Stripe should always be red. However, you cannot have a red Tron bike. And we were discussing whether or not pink or orange was close to red. And Becca raised a very good comment that pink is really just a watered down red, whereas you need actually two colours to make orange. So we've concluded, based on those facts, that the pink Tron bike is indeed the most superior.
Excellent. I think it's a good time to introduce a new feature we've come up with in honour of Herd member Liza Foran. Which bike would you be riding today, Becca?
I would be riding the Tron bike tonight. Yes.
And
specifically a pink Tron bike.
And in line with this feature, would you do a bike change after the rollers?
No. No bike changes today. It's too flat. What bike would you be riding, James?
After my previous choice was poo-pooed due to the country of its origin, I suppose I would have to be on the be a yellow Tron bike to match my yellow kit with my red cap. Steve, I know you're very fond of chasing down red pixels on a computer game.
Well, yes, and it's interesting you mentioned you've actually kept reasonably quiet about your results this week, James. I think it was at least 30 seconds into last week's commentary that you mentioned how well you'd done in the Zwift Racing League.
To be fair, I think I did bitch about how bad my race was on Instagram within about 30 seconds of finishing.
Yes, I've never been so inspired by 3 red pixels, as you say, as I was the other night chasing the sharks down for the cheetahs. I mean, I say chasing the sharks down. I was sat happily in a bunch while one of the cheetahs sat at 4 watts a kilogram the whole time. But we're not going to tell you which one he is in case you decide to steal him next week.
Oh, I've already made an approach towards your very strong cheetah to try and get him into the sharks for next week.
Excellent, James. Week 2 of the Zwift Racing League here. Tell us a bit more about the Zwift Racing League, and then let's have a chat about France. We've only been here recently with that hour and a half of horror you gave us climbing up on top.
Yeah, that was exceptionally pleasant. This isn't actually the Zwift Racing League. This is the Herd Beginner Racing Series. But I can understand how you get quite confused given the similarities in the numbers. And I also wanted to thank you earlier for your excellent French, which led me into the fact that our second race of the series currently has 597 people signed up for it. Last week. When France went into lockdown, a very, very, very large number of French riders in triathlete clubs decided to look for a race that was going to happen at a very similar time to their own race, and they found ours, and it was lovely to see, and they're back again. So excellent. And I've completely forgotten what the original question was, but I suspect it was around the racing series.
Yeah, I did confuse you slightly by asking a question which is intended to be about the Herd Racing League, and actually asked you about the Zwift Racing League because I can't read my own notes correctly, which is always good. But yeah, tell us more about the Herd Beginners Racing League. What can we expect this winter? Have you got any more treats in surprise for us? Are we climbing large mountains on family holidays?
So I think the climbers are probably going to be a little bit disappointed. I think the punchers will be very, very, very happy. But
good to see you've designed a race for your own qualities again, James, or a series for your own qualities there.
Not for the first time. But basically we're looking at 22 races up until the end of March, and they will all be, in terms of, call it low B, high C pace, probably half an hour to 40 minutes in length, generally 18 to 25 kilometres, so all short, all no category. So whilst, yes, technically everyone is in category E tonight, there are basically no categories set either during or after the race. Everyone goes off at the same time, so it's basically a case of chase down anyone you can, and through the course of a series, get to learn the people you're racing up against, because as a general rule, most people race in the same race week in, week out, and you'll start to form some nice rivalries and hopefully make some friends while you're at it.
And I think there's a lot to be learnt about how you race as well. I'm just watching the numbers on the screen while you talk to us there, James. And Ben Poynton's consistently holding mid to low twos at the moment, whilst riders around him are holding high threes, even approaching four. I think those of us that do the TTT on a weekly basis will understand really well kind of the opportunities you get to rest in the draft like this. And I think Ben's playing a blinder before we approach the aqueduct. So I think it's going to be an interesting ride. It'd be interesting to see if Ben can get over the top, and then being in the loveliest way, a big man, he can drop a lot of watts. I think he's going to be a real threat if he can stay near the front of this group.
Yeah, agreed. If Ben's in this group after the aqueduct, I think he's going to be a big threat at the end. He's definitely a 1,000+ sprinter, so he should have a good shout. Becca, how's Lisa getting on?
She's joined the second group on the road. There's about 15 of them there, and they're losing time to the front group, but they're going at a good pace. She's constantly sat at the front of the group driving it on, so I think she's feeling quite good.
Good work, Lisa. But yeah, as Steve was saying, the draft in here is very, very important. I've just noticed Michael Considine's in here as well, actually, and he's one of the herd riders based in Ireland, so he's definitely burning the midnight oil or the 11 o'clock oil, whichever one you prefer. So very late for him. But he's definitely very, very capable. I think he got himself up to a low A in the middle of the summer, so be good to see how he's doing. Max Szymanski's in there as well. He's got a good sprint on him. But we are getting pretty close to the aqueduct now. I think we've got 4 turns before we hit it. So that's going to be probably the one and only key pinch point of this race until we get to the actual finish. So we've got a few rollers just coming up to it, which could put a bit of pressure on this front group, because realistically you want to be conserving coming up to where you know you're going to have to put the big watts down, but this part of the course doesn't necessarily accommodate that. Steve, what are your thoughts on the aqueduct?
Well, we're not seeing the strong riders mess around here. There's some big sort of high fours, 5 watts being dropped, but the smart riders are keeping up with them. The aqueduct, it's as we approach it now, it's basically a sprint, isn't it? Upper climb. It's 400 meters long. Here we go as we hit it at the front of the group. It's just a question of sprint. I think tactically, what we're looking at now is we're going to see some riders try the classic banner attack. So it'll be who can hold their sprint the longest. And we're seeing, see Stewart from DDC really dropping the watts now. It doesn't look like he's at a flat out sprint though. Only holding 6 watts a kilogram. That to me looks like an attack that he's thinking, just going to make this hurt for as long as I can, and then maybe drop some people on the downhill. But it's, as you see, we're already on the flat. It's 420 meters long, but it's only really that short section. But it does blimmin' hurt, and especially after the rollers, you're going to have a lot of tiredness in the legs, and it's really hold on. A few power ups being dropped. James, what are you thinking here?
But Ben looks in good shape. I mean, he hasn't really had to throw out big watts, so I think he's come out of this really quite unscathed, and he'll have the additional help of gravity going down the hill, and he looks in really good position. So I think Ben could have a really, really good showing on this race. But here we are, down at the bottom of the aqueduct now. Not too far. Well, I say not too far to go. We've still got 13 kilometres to go, but it's pretty much pan flat from here on in. We've got a couple of little risers. I think the highest gradient we'll see from now on in, apart from a couple of rollers coming up shortly, is going to be about 4%. So Ben's in good shape. I quite fancy him for this one. I don't quite fancy Ben, but I quite fancy him to get, if he doesn't win, to finish top 3.
Becca, it looks like Lisa and Co have gone over the com.
They've just gone over the com, yeah. No one really made much of an attack. Lisa held mid-4s way up and sat comfortably in the pack, and now they're just going down the other side. No one's really pushing it on them. They seem quite content to stay in this group for as long as possible.
I am actually a little bit surprised that there wasn't more of an attack, because that really was your only 5% to have before until the end. So realistically, from now until the end, there shouldn't be any good reason for any gaps unless someone decides to try and do a split 5k before the end, for example. But I can't see that happening with a group of 10. So yeah.
Yeah, if I've got the legs, I'm going for it there tomorrow.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
only chance I've got.
It's a real tough ride tactically, isn't it? I mean, as more of a lighter rider, I'm not going to call myself a climber in your company and Becca's company, James, but as a lighter rider, I can put an all-out effort to try and distance you over the com, but we know in Zwift the reality is that the blob is so much faster than an individual rider. So with 13, what did we say, 12 k's to go after the aqueduct, that's just such a long time to stay out, even in a group of 1 or 2 at the front, maybe 3. I think looking at this group, they probably all are thinking, right, I'm more of a sprinter, conserve my effort, maybe kind of a half-hearted attack over the com, and they're just going to go all out at the finish. So it could be a very exciting finish we're shaping up for here.
Ben's having to hold freeze now, so pace is definitely picking up a little bit, although he's now dropped a bit, but he was definitely holding more than he had to in the first half of the race. So whether or not the guys at the front have started to think, actually, you know, we've been coasting for quite a while, so let's kick on a bit and see what happens. But yeah, so they're happily going along at 42 kph, which is a good pace in a group this size. I mean, certainly at the start we saw paces higher than that, but that's when we had a group of probably 30, 40, 50 plus. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. We just had one of those rises I mentioned earlier, and everyone's just decided to throw a feather as soon as they finish it. So they're currently 10% lighter whilst going downhill, but never mind.
So I think that sunflower field marks the last of the rollers. So if I'm remembering correctly, just look at the total climbing. I think we've only got a couple of meters left of climbing across the rest of the race. So in the last 10k, for any of it, I remember the reverse route better than this one, but you only accumulate 5-6 meters of climbing, so it is pan flat here. Classic commentator's cursor is there, James, as we were talking about the watts going up. Everyone decided to slow down, almost like they're listening to the feed and are sticking up a couple of fingers to us.
Apparently, according to some inside information I've just received, people are struggling to hear me. So you and Becca are coming across absolutely fine. Craig Martin, we miss you. Please come back soon.
That's we do miss Craig, and I think as I scroll away from my notes on my phone, which is always tricky, it's a good time to talk about France. It's the latest world on Zwift, isn't it? There was a lot of excitement when it came in. It was tied up with the Tour de France as well, which was it saw us attract a load of riders. They had the Tour de France events on here. The reality is it's only 6 new roads, 8 new roads. For someone who's probably not been on Zwift only since lockdown began the first time in the UK in April, I've not been on Zwift that long. There's still lots of other roads I can explore in other worlds, but to people like you and Becca, James, how did you find France? Were you excited for new roads? Were you a bit disappointed that there weren't that many more new roads?
Becca,
I really like France.
Yep.
France is actually, I really, really enjoy France, with the exception of Ventop, which was not something I will ever be repeating. It's good for a gentle recovery ride, and it's good for a race. And the scenery is really nice compared to some of them. After doing 65k on Tempest Fugit today, I would much rather look at the sunflowers and the trees in France for a couple of hours than I would look at all the sand.
What do you mean? I thought the sand was beautiful.
Oh yeah, it was so enjoyable.
In terms of France, I personally was very excited by the new world, very excited by the new routes. I think Zwift have done a phenomenal job with the France world. I'm certainly in no hurry to go up Ventop again after doing it a few weeks ago. But I very much enjoy the French routes. I really enjoy Petit Bouclet and Tire-Bouchon, the two sort of 60-kilometre routes they have here, going in different directions. I really like Petit Com for the length of it. I think calling Aqueduct a com is a bit ridiculous, but hey ho. But I do genuinely really like the French routes. That there were some technical difficulties at one stage, but they were ironed out relatively quickly. But no, I'm a fan of France, and I enjoy the Champs Elysees route as well, which I think is a great race route.
Yeah, that's true, and I know we've discussed previously, and perhaps on last week's feed as well, the length of climbs, and I think this is where perhaps Zwift has missed a trick. That I think Petitcom's great; those kind of 7 to 10 minute climbs, depending on where you are, and probably 5 minutes for you, Becca, isn't it? But those shorter climbs are good, but we Zwift does really miss a kind of 20-minute climb. You've got the epic, and that's about it, really. If you look across the world, so you wondered if they expand France, and it does look like there's the opportunity to do some more expansion. It looks like there's some trails that they haven't opened yet, maybe aimed more at the mountain biking community on Zwift. But one wonders if they might actually put in a few more climbs. It's for me. The small disappointments are, and I think it's a design flaw of the platform, but things like they don't have a reverse pity com. I think because of where they've put the Von Top com points, they can't actually do that through how the system's designed. But when we get famous enough to talk to Eric Min, that'll be the first thing I ask him, James. But generally, I'd agree. I must admit, I broke out in a big smile the first time as we come and see the famous Montmartre from the other direction. But the first time I saw this doing the crit event as part of the tour, I had to break into a big grin. It is that classic kind of Tour de France monument moment. You almost want the helicopter to fly by this as I give you a pointless fact about Montmartre while we do this, don't you?
We obviously need some little drawings and some fields as well. But yes, definitely gets the whole Tour de France feel, and like you say, you can almost see the helicopter flying over, and you'll get a nice little caption telling you about it and what it's famous for. But yeah, no, I think Zwift have done a really lovely job with France, and I hope it's a sign of things to come again in the future. But
And James,
I think we should just very quickly catch up on racing. So we're 18 kilometres down. Nothing has changed at all, as we suspected. It's pan flat. We have 7 kilometres to go. Becca, how's Lisa doing?
Yeah, they're in a group about a minute 7 back. They're not gaining any time. They're not losing any time. They're sat quite comfortably at 17.5 kilometres. Although there is a guy on a time trial bike in the group, which confuses me somewhat.
Could be a pen bike change.
I'm really hoping it's a pen bike change. Otherwise, he is doing way too much work. He is putting out more watts per kilo than everyone else in the group. So,
is he sat on the front?
Sometimes not.
I suspect this could be one of life's great mysteries we will never find the answer to.
similarly, we've just seen somebody deploy an aero helmet for no reason really in the front group. If I had an aero helmet at this point in the ride, I would not be using it until that final sprint.
Yeah, it's probably about as useful as using the feather going downhill.
You mentioned about the categories or the lack of categories this time around, James. I think it's a really interesting change between this and the Herd Summer Racing League. I know it was great never completing a Herd Summer Racing League in the same category and always finding new people to race from my own experience. But I think a lot of people got used to the kind of rivals they'd make and having the kind of sense of a battle with a fellow C or D or B rider through the course of a season. You seem quite confident that people will still have that same experience in the single category racing as well.
I think so. I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of single cat racing. Category racing brings with it complaints, partly down to how the categories are formed. So just to add a bit more context, so in order to be C, you have to be 2.5 watts per kilo or higher, and have your 95% of your best 20 minutes over your best 3 races has to be over 200 watts. Now, that is primarily to give the ladies, who are generally lighter, a more even platform. However, there are some men who are exceptionally light, and certainly the kids as well, the under 16s, because they I mean, we've had some sort of 12-year-olds who are about 25 kilos putting out 5 watts a kilo. And because of the way Swiss physics are set up, they'll fly off the front. And we had one C race where the winner won by over 3 minutes, entirely down to the fact that he was very, very light, and was able to bring out enough power to be able to hold 5 watts a kilo for the whole race. So those are some of the difficulties that you have with category racing. If we were in a position where the wattage restrictions was limited to men only in mixed racing, and there were children's categories as well, I think that would solve an element of a problem. But
Oh, James, I'm just going to stop you there. We've seen an attack in the front group. Jay Lenhart dropping, and Spalding dropping huge watts. Actually, we've just seen 8-9 watts a kilogram. A few people sprinting on to catch up, aren't they? Where's Ben? I'm watching Chris G at the moment. How's Ben hanging on?
Ben's pushing 600 to try and hang on. Looks like he will just about get back on, but the front group is now really, really shifting. Ben's just getting back into the group now, so
that's a really interesting tactic as well, isn't it? I'm suspecting that's somebody who is fearful of the sprint, not the heaviest rider, probably more of a puncher, more able to do kind of a short, okay-ish sprint, and I think they're just testing out, can they whittle down that field a little bit with a kind of, it was such a short effort, 5-10 second short sprint, wasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. And I think, like you say, it was just trying to whittle down the bunch a little bit to see if he could drop off a couple of riders to give himself a little bit more chance at the end. But hasn't worked. Everyone in the pack is still in the pack, which, to be honest, you kind of expect on a really flat course in Zwift. So you've got to get yourself 5 seconds in front at least if you're going to have a chance of actually breaking away. But yeah, you're not going to break away from a pack of 8 or 9 on a solo effort. If 3 of them went off at the same time, so if they had three teammates and they had a coordinated attack, that could work. But generally, you're not going to see that from a solo rider on a pan flat course, as we've just seen. But we are back to how we were.
And the watts have really dropped off again. As Shemensky actually goes to 6 watts a kilogram to prove me wrong, but everyone dropped to kind of 1-2 watts a kilogram now. It's really cagey at the moment. Kind of, what would you guys be thinking? We've got 2Ks to go now. I'm thinking I've got an okay kind of 1K effort, but I've not really got a top end. I'm not beating anyone in this group in a sprint, so I'm probably that person who's looking to launch a dig 2Ks out and just hope I can stay away from people. To be honest, right. I need a bit of a climb for that to work. Becca, James, what are you thinking here?
So my sprint is good in a women's team. I can outsprint the women. I cannot outsprint the men. So I would have to go from quite early out because my 1 minute effort is reasonable. But honestly, if it ends in a bunch sprint tomorrow, I've got no chance.
I am 100% conserving at this stage as much as I possibly can, and then just giving absolutely everything with 250 metres to go. Hoping for 14-15 watts per kilo, and try and hang on to that for as much as I possibly can. But at this stage in the race, I would 100% be sat back wheel and just hoping there's no splits in front of me, and just conserve, and then just throwing everything at the line.
And that's where he's not with us tonight, but Mike Bowser is so good. He would be sat doing kind of a watt less than everyone else seemingly in this group, or watt per kilogram less, I should say. And another skill, he has a great skill in the sprints as well, is that ability to sprint really, really late and hard. I think a lot of people will pick a kind of distance like you just did there, James. And I think the best sprinters really respond to what's going in the group and will have the confidence to go very late, but can then put some huge watts per kilograms out, can't they?
Oh yeah, I mean Bowser would absolutely be in this group, and you get to the end of a race, he's won it, and he's only done 2.8, 2.9 watts per kilo.
Yeah. Bastard. So we're into the last 900 meters now, aren't we? Pretty much. We've gone under the fictional Longchamp Rouge. How are we shaping up? What are we thinking, folks? Who are we picking for the win?
I Um, Gordon Sloan on our YouTube channel, he's called Michael Considine for the win. Michael's got a good sprint on him. I still like Ben's chances. I don't know if he'll win, but he's definitely got a bit of a sprint on him. I think we've got 1.5k to go. Is it even that much? I think the finish line is 25.1. But we will find out relatively shortly. As soon as we see the sprint banner, that's going to give us about probably 250 to go, I think. But we are very, very, very close to the end of this race. Just coming into the marina section now, and yeah, we're starting.
I think this must be the sprint. We're seeing people go, aren't we?
Yep.
I'm going to very quickly back Ben as well as a fellow quacker. I feel I've got to back him on this.
Picking up spots to 600, 700. Still pushing. Can't see the banner yet.
Yeah, that's the sprint line, isn't it? There's some people who've dropped aero helmets way too quickly there.
Yeah,
Steve went too soon and he died off.
Ben's pushing through sixth wheel.
Oh, Considine's absolutely smashed this. He's pushing 10 watts a kilogram. He's meters ahead of everyone. How's Ben?
Ben's currently fifth wheel. It looks like he's going to finish fifth on the line. Well done, Ben.
Yeah, brilliant. Right, so we switch to Lisa and watch her in now as well in the second group?
Yep, got Lisa. Becca, how's she doing?
Yeah, there's two riders, including the time trial guy, off the front of this little group, but Lisa's still hanging in there, although they have been getting quicker and quicker as they approach the line. I'm not sure what Lisa's sprint is like.
See Dennis Wade's in there as well. He and I have had a couple of battles over the last 12 months. I generally finish on the wrong side of those, particularly in Yorkshire, I seem to remember. No one likes Yorkshire.
And Lisa, of course, has famously beaten me in the sprint when I was the televised rider on a Friday night. James, she was able to out-sprint me when I sat up too early, having made a break over the com in Wantopia. Hillycom, that's the name I'm looking for.
This looks like it's split fairly early, so we've got quite a few off the front. Becca, do you want to just call the final shots?
No, you go ahead.
Thanks. So Lisa's currently sat in 20th place. She is down to the last couple hundred meters. She's gonna have to push if she's got anything left at all. You can see the banner. Come on, Lisa. 21st, 20th, and 20th over the line. Well done, Lisa. And she's obviously picked up a jersey for her efforts. Well done, Lisa.
Oh, well deserved.
So I think that pretty much brings us to the end of our coverage tonight. I'm just going to double check and see what joys we have in store for next weekend. Next weekend we have this will be nice.
I'm going by the sound alone there, James. It's hilly, isn't it?
We've got 2 laps of hilly route. So Watopia Hilly times 2, and that'll be the short, sharp version of hilly. So that is definitely going to separate the men from the boys and the women from the ladies. So that'll be something to look forward to for sure. So looking forward to next weekend. Thanks for Becca and Steve for their company again. And hopefully next weekend we'll have Craig back with us to give you all some split screen action. But thank you everyone for your company. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.